For 300 galactic cycles, the humans were a myth. A story told by elder traders near dying suns. A warning whispered between navigator clans crossing the outer rim. A name spoken quietly, almost reverently, by species who had never seen one, but had heard enough. They bleed, the Vreth merchants used to say, clicking their mandibles in amusement. They are soft. No claws. No armored shell. No regenerative tissue. They live barely 100 cycles, if nothing kills them first. And the galaxy laughed. The conclave of 18 worlds had catalogued over 40,000 sentient species. Of those, 32,000 had some form of natural biological weapon, venom, exoskeleton, sonar, electromagnetic discharge, acid glands, or psionic capability. Humans had none of these. What they had, according to fragmentary deep space recordings, was something far more dangerous, something the conclave's greatest minds dismissed as censor error, cultural exaggeration, or outright fiction. They called it will. Lyra had spent 40 years of her life studying the human question. She was old for a Silenthian, her 4 silver arms moved slower now, her twin optical lenses had begun to cloud at the edges, but her mind remained sharp as a neutron blade. She had read every intercepted human transmission, every battle record from the border skirmishes the conclave refused to officially acknowledge, every trader account from species brave or foolish enough to have made contact. She believed. When the conclave dismissed her third formal report, humans, a credible existential variable, she had simply gone back to her archive and kept working. Then, on the 14th day of the conclave's 802nd session, the doors of the Grand Chamber burst open. And a Vreth fleet commander, one of the most decorated warriors in galactic history, walked in. He was missing 2 of his 6 legs. His compound eyes, normally vibrant gold, were pale with shock. He said only one thing before collapsing onto the chamber floor. They are real. And we cannot stop them. The battle at the Caloris Passage had lasted 11 days. Lyra reviewed the recordings alone in her archive chamber, watching with her aging lenses wide open, barely breathing. The Vreth Dominion had deployed 42 warships, heavy-class cruisers equipped with phase disruption cannons, kinetic swarm drones, and biological toxin dispersal systems capable of sterilizing a planet's atmosphere in 6 hours. Facing them, 9 human vessels. The recordings were chaotic. The humans had deployed something the Vreth called electronic noise weapons that scrambled sensor arrays, but enough had survived for analysis. What Lyra saw defied every biological and tactical model the conclave had ever constructed. The humans did not fight like any species she had studied. When a Vreth cruiser destroyed one of their ships, the remaining 8 did not scatter, did not negotiate, did not calculate survival probabilities and retreat to minimum viable distance. They pressed forward. They fired while their own hulls were breached. They rerouted power from life support to weapons systems, voluntarily reducing their own oxygen supply to sustain offensive capability. One human vessel, already split open along its port side, trailing atmosphere and debris, still managed to ram its prow directly into a Vreth command ship and manually detonate its core reactor at close range. The recording showed the human commander's final transmission, captured before the blast. He was calm. He was smiling. Lyra played it again. And again. Then she sat very still for a long time. His name was Ethan. Commander Ethan Voss, according to what human records the conclave had managed to decrypt, was 38 years old, which made him, by human standards, middle-aged. By the standards of a species like the Vreth, who lived 400 cycles, he was barely a juvenile. And yet, the battle records showed that Ethan had coordinated the 9-ship engagement from a vessel that took direct hits in the first 4 minutes of combat. He had lost 30% of his crew in the opening exchange. His communications officer was dead. His navigation systems were running on auxiliary power. He had kept fighting. Not because he was unaware of his odds. The intercepted internal crew transmissions made that devastatingly clear. Ethan knew exactly what the numbers said. He knew his ships were outgunned, outmassed, and outnumbered. He knew that the probability models gave his fleet a survival rate of less than 9%. His response, captured in a ship-wide address to his crew, had already become the most translated piece of human communication in galactic history. "I've seen the numbers." "You've seen the numbers." "The numbers are wrong. They always have been. Let's go." Lyra submitted her final report to the Conclave exactly 17 days after the Battle of Colorus Passage. It was not dismissed this time. The chamber was silent as she spoke, all 140 delegates, representing 18 worlds, sitting motionless as she laid out 40 years of research in a single address. "We made a fundamental error," she began, her silver arms folded carefully before her. "We assessed the human species by cataloging what they lack. No natural armor. No regenerative biology. No psionic faculty. No extended lifespan. We looked at their physical form and concluded they were fragile." She paused. "We were looking at the wrong variable." She brought up the battle recording, the moment Ethan's voice crackled across the dying ship's internal system. She let the chamber hear it. Then she let the silence sit. "Every species in this conclave," she continued, "has evolved to prioritize survival. It is the foundational biological imperative. When facing annihilation, organisms flee, or they submit, or they cease. This is not weakness, it is logic. It is the rational response that 40,000 species in our catalog all share." Another pause. "Humans do not share it." She pulled up 40 separate engagement records, not just Colorus, but the border incidents the Conclave had buried, the traitor confrontations, the colonial defense actions that had somehow, impossibly, always ended the same way. They have a word, stubbornness, that their own linguists classify as a character flaw. A negative trait. Something to be corrected. Lyra's voice was dry now, carrying the weight of 4 decades of understanding. They consider their refusal to accept defeat a defect. They are embarrassed by it. And it is the single most devastating military attribute we have ever encountered. The delegate from Vreth Prime, a new commander, the old one still recovering in a medical facility, raised one of his remaining legs. "What do you recommend, historian?" Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "I recommend," she said carefully, "that we do not make enemies of them." Ethan received the Conclave's diplomatic transmission 6 weeks after Colorus. He read it twice, then handed it to his surviving communications officer, a young woman named Yui who had been promoted twice in 11 days by sheer attrition. "They want to talk," Yui said. "I know. 18 worlds. They're offering a formal non-aggression treaty, trade corridors, shared navigational charts for the Outer Rim. I know what they're offering." Yui looked at him. "What do you want to do?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, a battered thing, repaired with 2 different types of metal after the command deck had been partially destroyed, and stared at the transmission. He thought about the 30 crew members who hadn't made it back. He thought about the 9 ships that had left, and the 8 that had returned. He thought about the math he had refused to believe, and what it had cost him, and what it had cost the Vreth. "Tell them yes," he said. "And tell them to bring coffee. I have a feeling this is going to be a long conversation." Galactic Archives, closing note. By Lyra, senior historian. We catalogued 40,000 species and believed we had seen every shape that power could take. We had not. Power, we learned, is not armor. It is not venom, or size, or the length of a lifespan. It is not what a species is born with. It is what a species refuses to give up. Humans are soft. Humans are brief. Humans are, by every biological metric we possess, among the most fragile sentient beings in the known galaxy. And they are completely, utterly, historically unbeatable. Not because they cannot be killed. but because they have never, not once, in all of their recorded history, believed that they could lose. We did not discover humans. Humans let us find them. And that, I suspect, was always the difference.